Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Edmonton Global stage. My name is Kessia Kopecky, and for everybody online just tuning in, we are here at the Canadian Hydrogen Convention 2024, the largest hydrogen convention of its kind in North America. And we are live streaming all day and all tomorrow right here from the Edmonton Global stage. This session, we're going to be talking about the 5,000 Hydrogen Vehicle Challenge, where we have a goal to get 5,000 hydrogen-powered or dual-fuel hydrogen-powered vehicles on the roads in Western Canada within 5 years. So it's a pretty exciting initiative, and we're really excited to be here with our panelists to talk about it. And I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Scott, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Scott MacKenzie. I'm Director of Corporate and External Affairs for Toyota's operations across Canada.
And I'm Rebecca Goldsack, and I am COO at Dieseltech Industries, a dual fuel provider.
I'm Rod Graham. I'm the president of Velocity Truck Centers Canada. We have 18 physical locations across Canada and part of the Velocity Vehicle Group, which has 110 locations around the world.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So one special thing about this panel is that we're actually talking to some council members of what we call a Champions Council of the 5K Challenge, or the 5,000 Hydrogen Vehicle Challenge. So some of these people here on the stage are going to be playing a really big role in driving this initiative and figuring out what industry needs and how we can tap into incentives and how we can really build out this initiative to create demand and infrastructure at the same time. So thank you all so much for being here. I think the first thing I'd like to just start by asking is if you can tell me a little bit about your roles in the 5,000 Hydrogen Vehicle Challenge. And Rebecca, I'd like to start with you first.
Yeah, definitely. So DTI has developed the Guardian Hydrogen dual fuel technology. And what we've really found in the industry is we need a cost-effective now solution towards this 5,000 vehicle challenge. Until there's hydrogen available on every street corner, this technology allows your existing asset to be used using our retrofit system. So you're keeping that asset. If you don't have hydrogen available that day, you're running on diesel, logistics on that as well. So it's ultimately getting into the market, building out this whole entire ecosystem with our technology.
Rod, can you tell me a little bit more?
Sure. Big believer in that it's got to be a coalition of the willing, and there's an ecosystem that needs to come along. So we think that the role that Velocity Truck Centers will play is the service, support, and supply. One thing to talk about hydrogen as a fuel of the future, another one to figure out who's going to fix these vehicles once they're up and going. And so we have made a concerted effort to build out hydrogen-compliant technicians base. So very, very pleased. We will have one here in our Edmonton South location. We currently have one in Abbotsford, British Columbia, and they will have two more in Kelowna, British Columbia, and in Prince George, British Columbia. So given the fact that our customers are driving things with wheels, we know that there needs to be safety net and infrastructure in place, and so we are training our folks and making sure that we have the right types of locations for our customers.
I think that's a really good segue into talking a little bit about the training gaps or training needs that we have in Western Canada for this initiative. I know, Scott, does Toyota work with any training or have any specific interest in the training aspect?
Sure, thank you. So we've sold the Mirai, which is our hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicle, in specific markets in Canada over the last few years, typically linked to filling infrastructure. So we're not going to deploy the car if they don't have available filling infrastructure. But along with that, our dealerships need to be able to service those vehicles. So, we've got specific dealerships, including one in the Edmonton area that's sent their technicians, to Toyota to be specifically trained on, servicing a hydrogen fuel cell, because it's a different animal. It's a different skill set, I'll say, than servicing a typical internal combustion engine vehicle. So that's servicing side or the technician side. It's critically important because the cars need to work. They need to run well in order for them to be successful.
So for training and upskilling this workforce, what are the gaps that kind of need to be filled in order to simultaneously do demand, infrastructure, but also the resources and the talent? What are some of the gaps that you guys see that we're maybe actively working on?
I'll go first to that. One of the big things that we're seeing in industry is obviously this is a high pressure vessel, so there's a lot of extra additional training. So typically a heavy duty technician, they have a wide array of training. They have electrical, they have welding, they have, a vast, interworkings of that vehicle. So with specifically, dual fuel technology, it's that high pressure side that has additional training that is required. So we've worked with industry partners. We're working with polytechnics to develop what we call the Green Seal program. So that'll be an industry micro-credential program that heavy-duty technicians can actually be trained on. We've done it at small scale right now. We've partnered with Nate and Sate that provide half-day courses just so people can learn about, alternative fuels and dual fuel technology specifically. And then as this kind of, builds out from there, then we'll see some changes where actually the polytechnics will take that over, whereas right now we are doing the training for organizations such as Velocity.
And certainly we've internally come up with a whole host of kind of standard operating procedures. But Rebecca really touched upon the need for Polytechs to be part of this. We've got a world-class organization sitting here in Edmonton at NATE. We've looked to partner with them. We've partnered with Vancouver Community College as well as BCIT in British Columbia. And so the intent is to actually develop this Green Seal. So thanks, Rebecca, for bringing this up. It's a personal passion. I can tell you that when we provide town halls and talk to our technicians, they want to know more. They actually want to be part of where the world is going. And it also reflects kind of, as Rebecca suggested, all alternative fuels. So it's not just limited to hydrogen, but a micro-credentialing opportunity for folks to feel very comfortable with compressed natural gas, with hydrogen. What does battery electric look like? What is the amalgam? Because it will be a portfolio of fuels. But getting people very comfortable, as Scott suggested, there can be a little bit of a fear factor when you take a look at this, and it's dispelling the fear and making sure people understand exactly practically how they go forward and they do work on these vehicles.
Perfect. Scott, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Not much on the training side.
Okay, so for anybody that's really interested in learning more about how we're upskilling the workforce in the hydrogen economy, tomorrow at 11:45 we're going to actually be having a session specifically about that as well. So feel free to come by at 11:45 tomorrow here or tune in online, and you might be able to learn some more in a little bit more depth here. So going back into reaching this goal of 5,000 hydrogen vehicles, what do we need to do in order to get there? What is missing?
I don't know if it's what's missing, but it's more what the approach needs to be. And, Toyota's been pretty consistent around vehicle electrification in that we look at hydrogen, we look at battery electric vehicle, we look at plug-in hybrid, we look at hybrid, we look at solutions for different places and different people. But I think the same approach has to apply for hydrogen. So, I mentioned we've got a hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicle here on the show floor. That's a specific hydrogen technology, but we're also looking at hydrogen internal combustion engine. There's also e-fuels, which is blending carbon capture with hydrogen and deploying much like a gasoline, and then you've got blended fuels as well. So I think success is going to have the highest number of avenues or paths forward, and I think we need to consider all of them.
Do either of you have anything to add?
Absolutely. For this to work, it has to be a true partnership between government and business. Government looks over the fence and they're suspect of kind of commercial intents of business. Government has to get comfortable with the fact that business is in the business of trying to do well, but also turn a profit. And business has to take a look at government. We talk about kind of slow moving, but the reality is that it has to be a true partnership between the two, because it's not going to work any other way.
So for this initiative, what is something that we should be focusing on first in order to get this built out? Maybe even thinking from a demand side, what do consumers want to see?
I'll take it. What I like about what they're doing in this region is they're developing an ecosystem. So, we're on the product side, and there's people here who are on the supply side. There's people here on servicing and repair. Everything needs to move at the same pace together. And from a product standpoint, we could bring product into the marketplace, but if we can't fill it, it doesn't work. And similarly, people aren't going to invest in filling infrastructure without vehicles. So everything has to move at the same speed, and then you have to have an ecosystem with government partnerships that supports that and facilitates that. And I think that's something that we're working towards in the Edmonton region. I think it's a great thing to see.
Yeah, and kind of to go to those points too, one big thing when we went into, this market, we were like, Class 8 long haul, that's what we're going after. That has definitely shifted. What we've found actually in industry is it's actually return to home base, and it's a wide array, whether you're talking municipalities such as the City of Edmonton with their transit unit, Diversified with their motor coach, or Evan Grant's truck, Class 8 truck that's in the show today. They're all return to home base, and their operations rely on being able to move those vehicles. They can't be down. So the nice thing about dual fuel conversion is they keep that existing asset. If they don't have hydrogen available that day, their logistics doesn't, they can't not work. So in the commercial space, that's a big key player. And what we've really found is, we know we're a bridge technology until there's hydrogen available on every street corner, but our technology is allowing that to be built out. So it's a staged approach. And so, we've really been pushing we need to decarbonize. That is the end, that is what we're trying to achieve to get to net zero, but we need to do it in, strategic, monumental approaches. And so there's an evolution, and we're definitely starting to see that momentum, but there's still a long, long way to go.
I think the Champions Council is a great step forward. It's got to be an amalgam of all tourism and commercial. And as we push forward here, having the right people at the table, I think really help. And as Scott talked about, it is a portfolio of groups that have a role to play. But again, and we don't have it yet, but I will offer up my own personal commercial. I think for this to work, you need an energy czar. I think you need somebody that is prepared to effectively step in and see the whole ecosystem for what it is and start to draw hard on kind of individuals to come forward and be part of the solution. And I think Edmonton Global has done a masterful job of putting this team together. But I really think for this to move forward, there needs to be an energy czar of some kind.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean with the energy zone?
An energy czar would be someone that kind of steps in and actually understands all the elements and all the aspects of what this looks like on a time continuum basis, on an ecosystem basis, and is not afraid to make up the right phone calls to the right people and push. And like I said, it's got to be a partnership between business and government, or it's not going to work. But this individual needs to understand all of the dynamics of this, or unfortunately, it will be delayed because the individuals that are buying vehicles now, those vehicles will be around for a long time. So if it's an internal combustion engine purchased today, that vehicle will still be on the road 10 to 20 years from now. And so the intent for this to work, and I like Rebecca's comment about bridge fuels, we believe that as well. Someone needs to say, okay, fine, for us to get to 5,000, we need to start having early adopters, and we're going to make sure that the whole ecosystem is in place, and someone needs to be that one point of contact.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the training. We've talked a little bit about the actual technology, but how we fuel them is also really important too, right? So we can't really build this economy and this opportunity without having somewhere for vehicles to stop and fuel up. For anybody that's not aware, on March 28th, there was Alberta's first commercial scale hydrogen fueling station here in Edmonton that was announced. So that was really, really exciting. And hopefully that will also be building out a really big network throughout Western Canada. But as far as these this fueling infrastructure, how do we make it make economical sense as well? As these go return to base, for example, but what happens if it keeps going a little bit further, or we keep going maybe down to Vancouver or something?
I think you need to focus on high utilization. So if you're going to invest, several $1 million in a filling station, you need vehicles, no matter what kind, coming back regularly, daily, filling up to make it commercially viable. So, looking at passenger cars, and despite the fact that I just mentioned we have one on the floor right now, that's probably not the solution in the short term unless you're looking at fleet applications and cars coming back every day filling up. So heavy duty, building out heavy duty filling infrastructure for Class 8 trucks, and then potentially bolting on for passenger vehicles, at a later date, I think is probably the best recipe for success because, focusing on low utilization is just never going to work.
And I mean, to that point too, having hydrogen within 15 minutes of wherever your home base is and building pockets. So, having 4 pockets as an example throughout Edmonton so that, you always have 15 minutes of where you can build out that ecosystem on more of a mobile fueling station. And then from there, have then the supply and demand, and then you're putting a permanent fueling station there, taking that module and moving it to another location, building out the ecosystem. So it's very strategic in how it's actually being placed. But it is very much true on the heavy duty industry obviously just uses more fuel, so they're going to be using more hydrogen, and having that constant daily fueling that they're required. So typically when you look at an application, we're developing the technology so that we don't put any more tanks than a day's worth of what they would typically use. So they're fueling every day constantly.
Rebecca touched upon this dual fuel concept as well. Range anxiety is everything for folks that are early adopters. And so the ability to, if needed, to be able to still rely upon diesel as a backup if for whatever reason there is a supply issue on the hydrogen side. I can say that transportation indifference curves is kind of where we live at Velocity. And so purposefully, with our 18 physical locations, we have gone through and actually drawn concentric circles about where we need to be physically located from a dealership perspective. And I would argue that fueling needs to kind of think through that as well. We want to make sure that no one is ever more than 250 kilometers away from a place where they can actually find repair. And I would argue that fueling will likely go the same way.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So with this infrastructure, with this training, with the technology, is the 5,000 vehicle goal realistic? And if you could tell me a little bit about how realistic, could we surpass it?
I think it's realistic, but I also think you have to have a realistic approach. And, I said earlier about focusing on different modes of transportation, but even considering things like off-road vehicles, mining applications, farm equipment, it could be snow plows, that's more on-road, but just looking for, again, multiple pathways for success, because you can conceivably electrify everything. And from a hydrogen point of view, again, works very well in heavy duty. It works maybe best in heavy duty. It works for, passenger vehicle and normal day-to-day applications as well, but you need the most use cases possible in order to hit that number.
And, to that point too, there's over 1 million registered vehicles just in Canada. How many of those are actually in Western Canada? That doesn't include light tower, gensets, all those other things that aren't registered. So the possibilities are truly endless with this. And, it's definitely an attainable number in the next 5 years.
And I take a look at, if you look at medium-duty trucks, roughly 50% of medium-duty trucks are in BC and Alberta, and roughly 35% of heavy-duty trucks are in BC and Alberta. So you certainly have kind of the opportunity for going down that path. And I believe that the Champions Council is really the first step towards making sure that you've got that ecosystem in place where everybody's pulling on the same rope.
Well, it sounds like we kind of have all the right ingredients here in the Edmonton region to really make this goal work. That's everything for this panel, so thank you all so much for joining us. If you're interested in learning more about the 5,000 Hydrogen Vehicle Challenge, you can visit 5000hydrogen.ca or scan the QR code on the screen for those of you online. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back in 10 minutes, we'll be back at 1:30 to talk about the economics of the hydrogen economy. So we'll see you then.